Okay, Mike here. I'm filling out a survey for USAU Ultimate, for USAU, and I noticed some really disturbing things about the survey itself that I don't know if I'm going to get to a point in the open-ended to actually cover all of this ground. So I'm going to try to make a video and send it to USAU to give an idea of why this is a really bad survey and why I'm really concerned about the direction of USAU based on what I've seen in this survey so far, which isn't very far along in the survey from what I'm hoping, at least, anyways. It's about 9:20 in the morning. I'm down in Tampa on vacation, enjoying myself. I'm actually waiting for the stock exchange to open up because I might be doing some trading this morning before I go out and enjoy myself on the beach because it's 80 degrees out right now and the water is a refreshing 63 degrees. But I don't know if I can go back to the original questions here. I'm on question number 10. There was one question earlier that said, how do you identify, or what gender do you identify as? And then it lists more than just male and female, and this is a problem if the only thing that's going to qualify you as a male or a woman in a sport that has gender ratios, right? In the mixed version of the sport, the gender ratio that USAU prefers is 4-3. So, is this to imply that I, a male who is significantly faster and better in the air than the vast majority of women out there, can just say, oh, I identify as female, so you can put me in that 3 side of that 4-3 situation? I think that everyone involved with the sport would have a serious problem with me doing something like that. So I hope that USAU is not meaning to imply that that's the direction that they're going with this, but there are obvious and real biological differences between men and women, and this is why we separate the sport into open for anyone, mixed for men and women with a specific gender ratio, and women, not open to men, right? Because if Bo Kittredge comes out and says, you know what, I'm a girl, and does absolutely nothing else and signs up for the women's leagues, he would be a dominant force that would be just radically unfair for the entire rest of the sport. And if that's going to be the case, if Bo can do that and win every game by prayer to Bo and Bo skies everybody, well, then why wouldn't everybody just do that? And then you wind up dissolving the women's game. So I hope that USAU is not headed down that path. But I digress. Question number 10. Competition. So this is where the page below it before this starts with, how do you envision Ultimate 10 years from today? Imagine your ideal future, then rate each of the potential 2028 visions below in terms of importance to you. This 10-year vision will help guide the upcoming 3-year strategic plan. So already, here's a problem with the survey. That should be an open-ended question. That should be, give us 1,000 words. You've got 1,000 words. You've got, let's say 5,000, let's say 7,000 characters. Here's your 3-page vision of the future. Because there's a lot to that question that's going to be very difficult to answer with multiple choice answers or scalar ratings of statements. Note that some statements deliberately combine several things. Again, this is a problem with the survey. If I have a problem with one part of that statement, but the entire rest of the statement that they're going to suggest is perfectly okay, well, then what you've done is what's called burying the lead. So I have a real problem with say, this part, but I'm totally okay with this. But I have a problem with this, and we really need to address this. Well, you can't address these two competing points of view with a single answer, right? Again, these responses are going to be scalar, but if I'm 99 on this and 0 on this, that's going to work out to 80. But I'm not 80 the whole way on the whole thing. and there's where you have problems. So the survey should really be addressing that. Make a single statement, right, and then have a scalar rating of that single statement. Note that some statements deliberately combine several things. Please rate the statement based on the combination of elements. Again, I just went over this. There's a real problem with that in a survey. Use the comment box at the end of the vision section to provide more detailed thoughts. Well, I don't know what that comment box is going to look like, but it would be a simpler way. A simpler way to do this would be to have a smaller comment box under each section, especially if you're going to ask me 25 questions and I have a serious problem with 3 of those. Why am I waiting till the end, and then what, the person who is reviewing the survey is going to then connect the dots? It would be a lot easier to just have a smaller comment box under each question. And as far as coding is concerned, this is not difficult to code into the system. This is not difficult to design a survey in this manner. It's not going to increase the cost of server space. No. It's not going to make data storage more difficult or more expensive. No, it's not. So, again, this is really poorly done just from the get-go. But we'll go through each question. Please rate each vision statement independently from other statements on a scale of 0 to 100. 10. Competition. I can watch our local high school ultimate teams play league games in our community as a varsity high school sport with equal status to many other sports. Well, I'm a little bit twinged by the equal status to many other sports, not because I want to enforce any regulation that would force other sports to be on equal playing fields, right? Because people have different interests, and if I'm in Texas and football is all we care about, well, you try to promote. You're going to try to promote ultimate as a competitive sport, but I think you're going to be. I think it's going to be detrimental to the sport to tell that high school, no, you have to. Your fans have to put ultimate on the same pedestal as football. That's actually just going. I think that's going to give it a sour taste in the mouths of the fans in say Texas, where they live and die by high school football, and I don't mean that. They really do live and die by high school football in Texas, and they're proud of that fact. So that's not to denigrate them. But yeah, the best predictor for, for example, the best predictor for involvement with higher level sports like football, the best predictor for that is youth involvement. In high school, varsity sports are part of youth involvement. So a huge part of why football is not getting the ratings it once did had very little to do with anything political going on right now. It actually has almost everything to do with the concussion situation that erupted several years ago and was immediately reflected by and immediately had an impact on youth participation. And youth participation went right after that report came out, and went down even sharper when the NFL reacted to that report. Thusly, what you see after that is another chart that is NFL ratings. And what you're going to see is if the youth participation continues to go down, the ratings are going to precipitously continue to go down as well. The national anthem thing hurts their ratings, but really what it is youth participation. That is the best predictor for adult participation for any sport. Yeah, so I'll give that a 90. Yeah, I find it really important that, we try to work that into a varsity level sport. Competition. Mixed Ultimate is extremely popular and is viewed as one of Ultimate's unique features and major contributions to the world of team sports. Either it is or it isn't. I really don't care what part of Ultimate contributes to the world of team sports. This is an aspect that's neat and it's cool and it's fun, but as far as its impact on other sports, that aspect I really don't care. I would rather see things like the fact that Ultimate has expanded because people like it for whatever reasons. Maybe people like Ultimate because they like running and jumping and catching discs. Maybe people like it because for a large part of it, it is self-officiated. I kind of don't care what aspect of Ultimate people like. I just would like people to like Ultimate. Of course, you can't force that on anybody, but all you can do is expose them to it and allow them to make their own judgment. So I put this as a 30. I don't really consider this really important. 12, competition. We're going to watch the historic inauguration of Ultimate at the 2028 Olympic Games. That's really cool. Play will be mixed gender, and games will be self-officiated. Okay, so there's a lot going on here. The statement, we are going to watch the historic inauguration of Ultimate in the 2028 Olympic Games. Okay, 100. 100. That's awesome. I cannot wait to see this. The other thing is, because it's going to be on NBC, everyone is going to see this. So, like I said before, the only thing you can really do to expand Ultimate from an ethical standpoint is to expose as many people as you can to it and allow them to make their own judgments. So, let me see if I can fix my lighting here a little bit. All right. Anyways, by having it in the Olympic Games, you're getting a huge amount of exposure, which is great. So that's 100. Play will be mixed gender and games will be self-officiated. Okay, play will be mixed gender. I don't care. I really don't care. If it was the women's only, great. If it was the men's only, if it was the open version, I don't care. As long as people are seeing Ultimate, I really don't care what version it is. Especially if the IOC said, "Now we're only going to allow the women's game. We only want the women's game." Well, great. Who cares? We'll take it. So 15, right? And games will be self-officiated. Zero. So this is a major problem USAU is going to have to address in the future. As a spectator sport, this sport cannot be well done without some sort of active officiating, right? Because what you're going to get is what you got with the problem you ran into about 10 years ago with the highest levels of Ultimate, which is that people are going to abuse the rules, and every call is going to get contested. People are going to make bad calls left and right. Not every once in a while. I mean, constantly. If anybody remembers I think there were 2 national championships between Wisconsin and Florida years ago that were shameful. Actually, I was ashamed to watch those games. And there were certain techniques that were introduced to the games that just absolutely abused the self-officiated system. Also, as a spectator, it's impossible to see what's going on. It's impossible to know what was called and why if you're not on the field and can hear the call, which is really hard to do when your video is being recorded from a booth hundreds of feet away. So, as far as the spectator sport is concerned, you have to have the active official saying, no, especially if every call is going to wind up getting referred to an observer, which is what happened in that, I think it was 2008 national championship between Wisconsin and Florida. I don't remember the years, but I think there were 2 back-to-back national championships between Wisconsin and Florida, and they were awful. They were brutal to watch. It was bad call after bad call after bad call. It was reactionary calls, so if somebody calls a bad foul, I'm going to call a travel that wasn't a travel. I'm going to call a pick. If I get skied, I'm just going to call a foul no matter what. And if I blow somebody up, and I know it's a foul, right? If I'm a handler and I get point blocked, first things first, foul. But if I don't call that foul, then the first thing I'm going to do is the guy who picks it up, I'm blowing him up because the other team is going to have an obvious breakaway situation going the other direction. So in that circumstance where you get point blocked, generally speaking, what's very common at the highest levels of Ultimate is that one of the other players just goes deep right away, and what was once the offensive player doesn't have time to react to that, so the guy who performed the point block grabs a disc, bombs, automatic goal, right? So to prevent that, what guys were doing was pick up that disc, and then the guy who just got point blocked blows up the handler, deliberately fouls the hell out of him, and then just contests the foul. Well, then what? You send a disc back? That's ridiculous. That should be a no-brainer goal, right? So this is why you have to have active officiating if you're going to have a sport that people are actually going to be watching at the highest levels. Because number one, like I said, let's just summarize this. At the highest levels, people are going to abuse the self-officiated rules. 2, as a spectator sport, Have you heard anybody call the games when it's self-officiated? I don't know what's going on. We got to stop. We got to call. I don't know. For some reason, there's a stoppage. What are they doing? I don't know. Well, they're discussing something. We're trying to figure this out. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing when you have guys who know the game and are calling the game, have no idea what's being called. So when you have active officiating, you can have things like travel, right? You can have signals. You can say, now we're going that way. This is going to look weird, You can have timeout called. You have whistles to indicate stoppages. You have contact fouls. You have picks. I don't know if we can. And you get this visual, and then the guys in the booth know right away what's being called, right? And there's no arguments over the matter. There's no needless stoppages of play. You just turn around and play the damn sport, right? And if you want to argue with the referee, you get chucked, and that's all there is to it. So this is the problem with the statement. We are going to watch a historic inauguration of Ultimate in the 2028 Olympic Games. 100. Play will be mixed gender, 15, and games will be self-officiated, -10, right? So I put down a 70, but that doesn't really reflect my opinion on the whole matter. 13, competition. Semi-pro leagues are thriving. If that's true, great, 95. Our local teams draw big crowds and games are exciting. I think games are generally speaking exciting anyways, but our local teams draw big crowds. Okay, again, 95. The games are exciting. To whom? USA Ultimate coordinates with the top leagues. I don't know if I necessarily prefer USAU as the governing body, especially considering that they were once called the Ultimate Players Association, which I think was a better designation for their role in Ultimate. Female athletes play and receive as much support and coverage as male athletes. Why should they get exactly the same amount of coverage? If people are more interested in the women's game, like volleyball, why should the men get as much coverage? Right? So, every human being, I think, can name at least one professional female volleyball player to have ever played the sport. Name one man. Right, because guys don't like watching guys play volleyball. Figure skating. Do we really care about men's figure skating? I can name Brian Boitano, right? But I think the average person can name about rattle off a dozen female figure skaters, and that's reflected in the ratings with the Olympics in this matter. When it comes to figure skating, the women get way higher ratings than men. Gymnastics, the women get way higher ratings than men. Beach volleyball, the women get way better ratings than men. This is not a problem. This is just a reflection of consumer demand. If consumers want to watch women, if they want to watch the women's game, give them the women's game. I don't understand why we need to enforce this on anyone, right? I don't care if women get as much coverage as the men, right? Because what if they get more? Is that a problem? Because I don't have a problem with that. If they, and by the way, it's going to be virtually impossible to actually get exactly 50-50 coverage. It's a weaker argument to make that argument, but it's just not going to happen. It's not possible. So that is going to hurt the sport if we try to force consumers to consume something that they don't want, right? Why would ESPN cover Ultimate? Why would ESPN carry our sport if or NBC or ABC? Why would they carry our sport if part of the contract that we signed with them is that you also have to carry these games that potentially nobody's going to watch? And I'm not assigning women's Ultimate to that. I'm saying if we have men's mixed and women's, right? And the contract is if you want to carry 10 men's games, you have to carry 10 women's games and 10 co-ed games. That makes no sense. That makes no sense, especially if there's data on the matter, and let's say the data suggests that, well, the men aren't getting as much viewership. Well, then why would I sign that contract? That's insane. I want the women's game and nothing else, right? Or the co-ed games. Honestly, I think the co-ed games are the ones that are going to get the most, initially at least, are going to get the most viewership. And right now, there are 7 people that play on the field. So, in theory, that would make it actually impossible. If you're only going to carry the mixed division, it would make it actually impossible for the women to receive as much television coverage, because either you've got more women on the field than men, or you've got more men on the field than women. Unless you change the number of players on the field, which with mixed I disagree with. I don't think that there should be 6 or 8 players. 7 is just right. With open, well, men are bigger, taller, faster, stronger, and I could see, if you're going to play in a 70-yard field with 25-yard end zones, lowering the number of players in the field to 6. I've heard arguments for 5, but I don't know if I like those arguments. But anyways, 13, competition semi-pro leagues are thriving. 95. Our local teams draw big crowds. 85. Games are exciting. 80. USA Ultimate coordinates with the top leagues. 50. Female athletes play and receive as much support and coverage as male athletes. 0. -5. And you know, I missed something in that statement. Female athletes play and receive as much coverage as male athletes. So they play as much as... How is that even possible? There are 7 players on the field. Either they will play more or they will play less. Also, here's a serious problem. The gender ratio on the field should, at least to some degree, reflect interest in the sport. So if there are 100... So right now, in a lot of the leagues that I've played in, interest in the sport is extremely male-dominant. And that has nothing to do with it being a sexist sport at all. We all know that. Come on. But if you have a league where 150 guys are going to sign up, and in all likelihood you're going to get about 30 women, this would be the Woody Winter Leagues, right? It's about 5-to-1 men to women as far as interest in that league is concerned. Well, if that was an outdoor league and we were playing 4-3 gender ratio, what that means is that if you're going to have 4-3, you really got to have at least 5 women on the team. Probably you want 6 rostered in case one doesn't show up or 2 don't show up, because that's just how things work out. Not everybody shows up, right? So if you have 6 women on a team and 30 signed up for the league, that means you can have 5 teams. If you're going to have a ratio of 4-to-3, again, you really don't want more than 10 guys on the roster, so if that's 5 teams times 10 is 50. So now you've excluded 100 men, right? So one thing you could do to address that is, instead of having the gender ratio be 4-3, is you can have it be 5-2, right? So what we care about is getting people to play the sport, right? We can't force people to play the sport, but people who want to play the sport, we should get out of their way and allow them to play. So if we have that 5-2 gender ratio, there's greater ability for more people to be involved in this league. Now, I realize that you have to compete with field space, and there's other things to consider, you know, but this is a problem. If women have exactly as much playing time as men by fiat, I kind of have a problem with that. Especially if the only way to do that is to restrict the number of guys that wind up playing, right? So, again, going back to this league, if you've excluded these 100 guys from playing, well, how do you expect to expand as a league if your interest is 5-to-1 male to female? Well, you can't. You can't. You can only expand women, and that's you're setting yourself up for failure by doing that. So no, I don't really care who gets what amount of playing time. What I care about is the opportunity for that playing time, right? So in that case of that league, there is not the opportunity for those 150 men to have equal playing time, because 100 of them are going to get 0. 100 of them are going to get 0, right? And so, again, this is poorly worded. There's 4 statements going on here. In fact, there's a lot more than 4 statements going on here. Semi-pro leagues are thriving. Okay. Our local teams draw big crowds. Okay. Games are exciting. Okay. That's 3. USA Ultimate coordinates with the top leagues. I don't know if I like that, but okay. Female athletes play as much as male athletes. That's a 5th statement. They receive as much support as male athletes. I don't even know what that means, so okay, sure. If we're talking about how they divide their funding, I think, yeah, if USA gets a certain amount of funding and it's not specified what that funding is to go towards, and you've got 30,000 women playing and 50,000 men playing, then yeah, you divide that up equally, right? So that each individual represents the same dollar amount, right? So okay, that's fine. And then receive as much coverage as male athletes. That's 7 statements in one question. And herein lies the fundamental problem with this survey. I get one scalar answer to give to this. I get one number to apply to 7 questions. So I hope that USAU, in the future, when they, or maybe with this survey, instead of doing it this way, instead of deliberately burying the lead, break these questions up into 7 different questions. Break this one question up into 7, and have people answer based on that. And then you think you'll get a better reflection of what people are interested in, and how your membership wants the USAU to moving forward. So I'm going to give that a 15. Because honestly, the third part of the statement, the female part, that makes up a greater. That to me is far more problematic than the benefit that we gain from the first part of the statement. 14. Now we start getting into the questions I haven't actually answered yet, but so this will be news to me. 14. Competition. High quality Ultimate is regularly broadcast and easy to watch on multiple devices. Okay, that's great. Not that important to me, but yeah, that's pretty cool. The fan base has grown exponentially, again, which you won't do if you're excluding players. Well beyond players and their families. What? Games are being watched by many with ample commercial interest and corporate sponsorship. If the game is going to grow as a spectator sport, you kind of need this. If USAU in the 90s, Gatorade had the USAU when it was the UPA had the opportunity to accept sponsorship, corporate sponsorship. Gatorade actually wanted to sponsor, and I think Nike actually came and wanted to sponsor too. And they said, no, we don't want corporate sponsorship. We want that out of our league. Well, as a spectator sport, you're going to need that to move forward. Maybe you don't want it to be a spectator sport. I'd like it to be a spectator sport because I'm a spectator. I want to watch it. I want to watch the best players play. So I'll give that a 75. Again, the problematic part of this is that high-quality Ultimate is regularly broadcast and easy to watch on multiple devices. That already is like 3 different statements. High-quality Ultimate is regularly broadcast, easy to watch on multiple devices. The fan base has grown exponentially and well beyond players and their families. I don't even know what that 4th statement means. Well beyond players and their families. The fan base has grown beyond players. Okay, I get that. So you want people who have never played the sport to be fans of the sport. All right, it's probably a losing strategy moving forward, but all right, fine. Games are being watched being watched by many, and with ample commercial interest and corporate sponsorship. I'm about 75 on all of these, but again, that's 7 statements that I'm answering with one number. Do you see my problem? I mean, we're going to keep moving forward here. We'll do the whole survey. Question 15, competition. Youth and teens who excel from an early age have many high-quality development and competitive opportunities to become elite players. Opportunity. Yes, I love this. I love all of this. But, again, youth and teens who excel from an early age have many high-quality development and developmental opportunities, have many competitive opportunities to become elite players. So we've got strategies
two different strategies to achieve a goal. So do I agree with the goal? Do I agree with each strategy? And do I agree with each strategy to achieve the goal? You've got a lot going on in this question, and again, I'm answering it with one number. Now, for me, this is the same number. Right? So in this case, we're not cramming something down somebody's throat. We're just giving them the opportunity and getting out of their way. So, yeah, that's pretty cool. Let's do like a 90. Community. Ultimate is being played in diverse communities all over the country by many thousands of youths who today are considered underrepresented in our sport. Sport is now much more reflective of the diverse makeup of the U.S. I see where this is headed, and that's problematic. I really don't care if the black community or the Hispanic community or the Asian community doesn't give a crap about our sport, right? If there is some sort of pushback, from this section of our country, I kind of don't care. All you can really do is expose people to it, and if they like it, they like it, and if they don't, they don't, you know? It's going to be tough to try to... The reason basketball does so well in urban communities is because you need a basketball court and a ball to play basketball. A basketball court, it's not that big. I think it's 75 long. I think it's 75 feet long. I could be wrong about that. I don't honestly know that. And I have the internet right in front of me, so I don't know why I don't just look it up. But we all know that an ultimate field is about the same size as a football field. There's a reason football doesn't excel in urban communities, and that is that you need a lot of space to have a football field. Also, there's like 63 players on a college roster, and there's 53 on a finished roster for an NFL team. That's a lot of players. And if you're going to have them practicing, you need a lot of practice space. You can't have all of those players practicing on one football field. That's why places like the Giants, for example, or the Jets have practice facilities that are massive, multiple football fields. The spring training, the summer training facilities are massive. The same thing is true of the spring training facilities for baseball teams. I mean, you have Major League team, AAA team, AA team, high A, low A, short season. And I don't think they carry any other leagues to spring training, but that's not 6 fields per team. They wind up having the spring training facility, for example, right here in Tampa is like 15 fields. So, I guess I'm going on a bit of a tangent here, but Ultimate is being played in diverse communities all over the country. How are you going to get to that point? I think that's a more important question to answer. If they're trying to say it's being played by diverse races, say that. Say that. Because I really don't care. I really don't care who, by virtue of race, is playing our sport. Right? I want as many people as possible to play our sport. Right? If that winds up being a whole lot of Asians, okay, don't care. All over the country by many thousands of youths today who are considered underrepresented in our sport. That sounds like code word. That sounds like code word. What are you trying to cover up with that, USAU? Impoverished? Well, the sport only requires, in theory, a disc. And then you could use, t-shirts and baseball hats for end zone corner markers. But what you really need to play a game of Ultimate as prescribed by USAU is a lot of space. And that's going to be difficult to do in places where there isn't a lot of space or where land is extremely expensive. Even in Connecticut, where we have space, land is really damn expensive. So, places like northern Bridgeport, where there actually is field space, where you can very easily get to Westport, where there's plenty of field space. If you're trying to get it into Bridgeport, if you're trying to get people to play in Bridgeport, there's a few places where you can do that, but again, field space is extremely expensive. And we also have what's called winter up there, and it's really difficult to play outside when there's 2 feet of snow on the ground. So you end up playing indoors, which is great, but it's not the same as the outdoor game at all. It's a different game for all intents and purposes. And again, that comes at a ludicrous expense. Woody plays over at Chelsea Piers. The CUC plays at North Branford and East Windsor. I believe there's a league that opened up. There's a number of indoor leagues, but I mean, renting indoor field space is really, really, really expensive. So I think it's going to be tough to get that to happen and have, impoverished youths play the sport. All of the sports all over the world are having problems with that, where in the U.S., youth participation in hockey it's really tough to expand that because hockey is such a ludicrously expensive sport. And it's really tough to play just backyard hockey, right? I mean, you could slap on rollerblades and play in the street, but that's not wise. I suppose you could go to a basketball court, but you'd need the entire court for it to be worth a damn. I suppose you could play field hockey, but I mean, again, it's just not the same sport. Otherwise, you need ice, and you're not going to get that in Florida, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, Texas, Oklahoma, most of Missouri, New Mexico, Utah, Arizona, Nevada, California, to a lesser extent, Washington, Oregon. Or Hawaii. I mean, it's going to be really hard to have kids playing pickup hockey in those states. So I feel like this question is a cover, and I feel like we're about to get towards what it's going towards, but I think that the final statement here, the sport is now much more reflective of the diverse makeup of the U.S. That's bad. That's problematic because, again, in Ultimate, you have Asians make up something like 4% of the U.S. population. Honestly, how much of Ultimate is played by Asians? It's a lot more than 4%. In fact, let me just Google this right now to be absolutely certain. U.S. demographics, Asians. Yeah, I'll go to Dr. Wikipedia. Total about 5.6% of the entire U.S. population. Now, I realize this is anecdotal, but I think we can all acknowledge that Asians make up a heck of a lot more than 5.6% of USAU membership and participation in the sport. You'll also find, let's see, percent of, let's do this, demographics of Jews in U.S. American Jews, Wikipedia. Let's see. They make up, so in 2012, the American Jewish population was estimated at between 5.5 and 8 million, depending on the definition of the term, which constitutes between 1.7 and 2.6% of the total U.S. population. Again, I don't think that there's I don't think the 2.6% of USAU of Ultimate players are Jewish. I think it's a heck of a lot more than that. Do we really want to diminish their presence? Because I think that may wind up being, if we were to overnight wave a magic wand and try to get the racial makeups and the religious makeups, and if we were to wave a magic wand right now to do that, unless you're going to have the population of Ultimate players explode, I mean explode. If you were to keep the same number of players right now, what you would have to do is supplant, for example, Jews with non-Jews. You would have to supplant Asians with non-Asians. So, again, I really don't care about the racial makeup of the sport. The vast majority of the NBA is black. So what? Is that because they're being racist against whites? No. It's because the average height and athleticism of the average black male is significantly greater than white males. Now, there may be a number of reasons for that. Height obviously being largely genetic, but I really don't care that the NBA is like 80% black. In fact, I could probably look that up now. But we all know that it's the vast majority of NBA players are black, and I don't care. Great, I want the best players. I don't care about their race. Give me the best players. For Ultimate, I dream of a day when, let's say, if I were to have kids that would play the sport, when my children and my children's children would be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character, right? Be judged by how good they are at Ultimate, not by the color of their skin. So, I know it's not worded as such, but it sounds like code for that. And no. Again, what you should do is maximize your exposure and allow people to make their own decisions. But anyways, community. Ultimate is being played in diverse communities all over the country by many thousand. Okay, Ultimate is being played in diverse communities. Kind of don't care. I kind of don't care where it's being played. I hope that it's being played in as many places as possible, but I don't really care where those places are. All over the country by many thousands of youths. Let's try millions. Let's try for millions. Who today are considered underrepresented in our sport. Who are those, and how are we going to get there? So, my brother is underrepresented in the sport because he doesn't play. He's not being represented because he's not a player. So, do we want to get him? Maybe. If he's interested, sure, let's do that. Okay. The sport is now much more reflective of the diverse makeup of the U.S. So we got 4 statements in here, and the last one I think is just an absolute garbage. Dumpster fire, 0. Diverse communities, I kind of don't care, so let's say 25. By many thousands of views, I would like that to be millions. So let's say, let's call that like a 70, who today are considered underrepresented in our sport. Well, who is being underrepresented? What does that really even mean? Let's make that like, let's call this like a 30. Am I actually saving these? Yeah, I think it is actually registering these. Okay, community. I see Ultimate games being played wherever I go. That'd be cool. Pickup. That'd be cool. Local rec leagues. That'd be cool. Tournaments. That'd be cool. The sport has exploded. Yeah, that'd be really cool. From what I see at fields and in parks at my travels, youth and adults are playing the game as much as soccer. You're setting yourself up to failure again when you're trying to compare yourself to another sport. Playing the game as much as, say, soccer all over the world. Let's not try to set another sport as our benchmark. Let's have our own benchmark. And let's have a number or a percentage. Let's say that youth and adults are playing the game once a week and participation is at 30% of the U.S. population. That's a metric. That's an actual goal we can try to attain. What if soccer's numbers go down without Ultimate numbers going up? No, I don't want that. So, poorly worded. There's a lot of aspects to this question. Generally speaking, they all sound pretty good. I'm going to give this 77. Because, I would like to see wherever I go. The last part, let's try not to compare ourselves to other sports. Okay. Community. Ultimate is widely known as having the most inclusive communities, appreciating and value all dimensions of diversity. There's that word again. A sense of acceptance is felt both on and off the field. Again, I want to judge people by the content of their character, not the color of their skin, or even the color of their party affiliation, if we're talking about things like, if we're talking about things like political persuasion. I really don't care about people's political persuasions. If somebody is I'll say it, if somebody is an asshole and we don't want them in our league, then let's get them out of our league. I don't want everybody to be playing the sport. Especially, you know what the most important thing is? What if somebody doesn't want to play the sport? Maybe we'll let them walk away, right? Why would we cram that down on somebody? I'm realizing now it looks like there's a whole bunch of crap all over the lens. I didn't bring my cleaning wipes with me, unfortunately, so I'd have to use a t-shirt to clean this. So you guys are going to have to just deal with that for now. Ultimate is widely known as having one of the most inclusive communities. Well, I mean, do we really want everyone? Again, everyone could include people who don't want to play Ultimate, who have tried it and don't like it. Appreciating and valuing all dimensions of diversity. Diversity of what? Right? Diversity of talent? Okay. The diversity of strategy? Okay. Diversity of skin color? I don't care. I don't care. If, I want people who are interested in the sport to play the sport. I want people to want to play the sport to have the ability to play the sport. I don't care what their races are. So I don't care what their gender is. I don't care what their religion is. I don't care about their political persuasion. Can we judge people based on merit, please? A sense of acceptance is felt both on and off the field. Again, I mean, you accept into your peer group those who you want to accept into your peer group. And, if there are certain peer groups that are splintering, if there's division within the sport without animosity, I don't really care, right? I mean, there were people with whom I associated in high school that, were from all walks of life, and, if this group here doesn't really associate much with this group here, who cares as long as they're not, competing with each other, as long as there's not, infighting, right? So if Mike is the happy medium, Wu-Tang Clan, right? If Mike is the happy medium that's bouncing around between these two peer groups, and again, there's no vitriol between the two of them, I kind of don't care that there's a little bit of fractioning going on. Yeah, I'll give this a 50 because this is a whole lot of I really don't care, one way or the other. It's not good or bad necessarily, but I really hope this isn't a cover for let's try to get more people of a certain race into our group. No, let's try to get everybody. Community. Dynamic local and state-based community organizations now operate across the country in most major cities and all states as active member-driven associations to provide great local programs and events that connect to national-level opportunities, advancing the sport in flexible, tailored ways for local needs and dynamics. Okay, there's a lot in this. So let's break this down into parts. Dynamic local and state-based community organizations, so like Woody, or the CUC, or Buddha, or that monstrous thing up in Ottawa. I forget what the acronym is for that one, but that one that has like 5,000, that league that has like 5,000 players in it. The Savannah Ultimate Project, which collapsed, from what I understand, but still. So those community organizations now operate across the country in most major cities and in all states. Well, they largely already do, but sure. As active member-driven associations, okay, yeah, you want active members of your sport to be active members of your sport. All right, that provide great local programs. Yeah, I would like them to provide great local programs. Competition between high school programs. Middle school programs. Club level programs for youth, which I think is a strategy that I think would be very helpful that I don't think is being focused on is youth club level ultimate. But I digress. Member-driven associations that provide great local programs and events, like tournaments, great, that connect to, or, just games in general, that connect to national-level opportunities, okay, advancing the sport in flexible, tailored ways for local needs and dynamics. Right, I can get along with all of that. I think it's a really poorly worded question. Basically, I think what this is getting at is that we want to have local associations across the country. Yeah, okay, fine. And we want those local associations to be trying to drive up membership. Oh, yeah, okay, fine. And we want those local associations to, put together tournaments, to put together you know, to put together games, to put together. Maybe you have like a high school league where you have the Southwest Conference in Connecticut, for example, or that would I get what they're getting at here. So okay, I don't know that this is absolutely necessity, but it would be nice. So let's call that a 70. I think the sport can advance pretty comfortably without that. It would make it easier, but I think it can advance without that. Character, 20. Character, spirit of the game, and we're using spirit, S is capitalized, and G, game, is capitalized. So we're using spirit of the game, I guess, as the concept spirit of the game as described described by the USAU, has been proven to be a powerful vehicle for teaching life skills to youth and developing strong character. Yeah. Well, like Boy Scouts used to be about making men from boys, right? And about how, like how Jim Calhoun used to say that I never make promises that your son will go to the NBA. I never make promises like that. The promise that Jim Calhoun made was that I will make a man from your boy. You'll be proud of your son when he exits our program. It has even been shown to positively influence society beyond sports. That I don't give a crap about. At least directly. If we're going to directly influence society, I really don't care about that. If the building of character has this secondary effect of building the character of our society, great. But I don't think that we should be focusing on that directly. Beyond sport, creating many opportunities for Ultimate to advance its growth and impact. Okay, so I think I see what they're getting at. So should Ultimate players be involving themselves with protests? This sounds like code for, should Ultimate players be involving themselves with protests to advance Ultimate? No. If that's what this is code for, no. But, spirit of the game is based on the concept of, and you can boil spirit of the game down to 4 words. Excuse my language, but don't be a cock, right? So, to that degree, I hope that people would, if we're going to be teaching kids that, no, you don't blow up a handler after you've been point blocked to prevent an easy score and then contest the foul. Well, you shouldn't blow up the handler in the first place, but contesting the foul is, obviously adding more negative to the situation than is necessary. But, I would like to see spirit of the game. I think that spirit of the game is something that should, by its own merits, teach kids a life skill of, develop strong character. That's the wording that they've used. Yeah, sure. To teach life skills and to develop strong character. Sure. I don't know that I care. We're going to do this again. Spirit of the game has proven to be a powerful vehicle for teaching life skills to youth and developing strong character. It has even been shown to positively influence society beyond sport, creating many opportunities for Ultimate to advance its growth and impact. There's a lot going on here, USAU. Break these questions up. Because there's parts of this that I don't like so much, and there's parts of it that I do. I don't know that that part of your 10-year plan from a business perspective should be focused on this. I think you should forget about that. Second half of the statement has been shown to positively influence society beyond sport. I think you should forget about that for now. There's just not that much participation in our sport relative to a ton of other sports. I don't think that should be in your 10-year plan. I think your 10-year plan should be focused on, most importantly, exposure. Exposing as many people to the sport as you possibly can. And then, when you have greater exposure, when you have greater enrollment, when you have greater participation, you can have these data-driven analyses that will come naturally. You don't have to perform them. People will naturally perform them, because private companies do this all the time with the 3 major sports here in the U.S., baseball, football, basketball, and the NBA doesn't need to oversee them. See, studies on how well basketball positively influences society. Outside parties will do that naturally. So I don't think this should be part of your 10-year plan. So in terms of its importance towards the 10-year plan, I find this very limited. Let's call this a 50. Although I like it, I just don't think that it's, from a business perspective, good to be in your 10-year plan. Again, character, 21, spirit of the game, capitalized S&G, is thriving and cemented into the way Ultimate is played, organized and developed from local leagues to elite international competition, and is evident in the way kids play at school, as well as in televised games. Players talk about and strive to live out SOTG, so spirit of the game values. Well, there's really only one core value of spirit of the game, and that is just don't be a cock, right? So I think you've already got this to a large extent. So again, I like it, but I don't think any of this really belongs in your 10-year plan. Largely because you've already achieved that, and one of the spirit of the game as being part of the rules. I think it's part of the preamble to the Chapter 11 rule book. That's one of the things that actually draws people to the sport already. So, I don't think you need to cram this down people's throats, because that's part of your attraction to begin with. So, again, I don't know that this is really important to a 10-year plan from a business perspective. I think you should be focusing on, again, the big 10-year plan goal is let's get a number. Let's get a number of youth participants. Let's get a number of club participants. Let's get a number of college game teams. Let's get a number of leagues. Let's get a number of televised games. Let's get viewership totals. Let's try to determine a fan base. Let's set up actual numerical metrics that we can identify, achieve, and then identify when we've achieved them very easily. So I'm going to give this a 40. I think you're largely there, and this shouldn't really be a major part of a 10-year plan. Holy cow. How many more questions do we have? All right, it looks like... All right, well, we're closing in on an hour here, so I think what I'm going to do is just finish up this page. And I hope USAU gets the point of where I'm going with all of these responses. 22, character. Self-officiating is standard for all levels of play. Referees are not used at any level of the sport. Okay, this one I'll actually address. This is extremely problematic for the reasons I've already gone over with. At the highest levels of play, you have to have referees. You have to have an active officiating. Now, people are going to refer to sports like curling to not have active, that don't really require active officiating. Well, that's largely because there are so few rules, and it's so difficult to take advantage of those rules that it's really not necessary. There's no human contact, right? 2 players can play curling. You can almost play curling by yourself, right? So it's a very different game, And as far as a spectator sport is concerned, even if you know absolutely nothing about the rules of curling, there's hardly any stoppages, right? We can figure out what the objective is, right? With curling, as a viewer, you can turn the TV on mute and have absolutely understand the entirety of the game. As a viewer, you can't do that with Ultimate. If a foul is called, how do we know that a foul has been called? How do we know that it isn't a travel? How do we know that it isn't a strip? How do we know that it isn't a contested stall? How do we know, right? And how do we know that it's being contested? How do we know what the results are? And then if we're going to wind up having players constantly abusing these rules and constantly referring to an observer constantly, then why not speed up the game? Why not allow the fans to have a better viewing experience and have active referees just come in, blow the whistle? If a timeout is called, right? We know that a timeout is being called because we blow the whistle, call a timeout. Wave the clock off, timeout, right? And now, I don't know if I like so much having the clock, but I realize if you play a game to 15 strictly, and, it goes on for 5 hours, right, that doesn't make for a good viewership experience. And I realize that's why the AUDL and the MLU, which is not defunct, but let's say why the AUDL and the MLU used past tense, and the AUDL continues to use a clock, and that's because it's trying to progress as a spectator sport, because that's the only way to make any money doing that. Otherwise, you have no league. Otherwise, you have no professional sports if there's no way to make it a profession. So this is really bad. Self-officiate. The fact that it's self-officiated at the lower levels is fine. I'm glad to have that. It does promote spirit of the game. Unfortunately, like I said, at the highest of levels, the sport is too easy to abuse at a dangerous level. Do you lay out on an in cut when you have the inside position on a disc that's not thrown to the outside of the offensive player, right? Because if it's thrown to the outside of the offensive player, there's no way to get at that disc. The offensive player is going to beat you to it. But if it's thrown to the inside, you may get there in a layout, but if getting there first means blowing up the offensive player, and having to follow through, break his ankle, or fracture a tibia, or tear, or tear an Achilles, like, we don't need that. And the league, the AUDL actually sent us referees now video of these type of fouls happening and said, get this out of the league, right? That's going to be tough to do if you don't have an active referee. That foul is going to get contested every single time. And unless you have an organizing body that comes together and says, referees, here's the video of what we're trying to describe, get this out of the game, we can call that a foul. We can tell the referees, that's a foul, right? You see this footage? That's a foul. By the way, NFL, this is a catch. Show your referees this is a catch, and then change the rule to a catch is a catch. But an entirely separate story. You can't do that in a self-officiated game. You can't send out video to all. It's an impossible task to send out video and say this is a foul. This is what USAU means, but when they say a foul, this is what USAU means when we say a travel. This is what USAU means when we say a pick, right? Right, because I see a lot of picks happening called at the highest levels of the sport where there isn't referees that are not picks, right? Where there's no change of direction, there's no contact, there's no slowing, there's no speeding up. You expect a pick to happen, so you call it before it even happens. What happens if as a defender, what happens if you're about to run into your own player? Or what happens if you're about to run into an opposing player, the opposing offensive player gets out of your way so you can make that defensive play? Or makes a cut of their own volition that allows them to get out of your way. I mean, that's not a pick. But again, you can't, that's really, 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 really hard to enforce without making a needlessly verbose and Bible-thick rule book, which is the way the NFL is going, without active referees. And again, it's not really that much of a problem when you're not trying to promote your sport as a spectator sport. But the only way to advance into the professional leagues is to do that. And the only reason that media outlets, the only reason you're ever going to see this on TV is if it is a good spectator sport, because ESPN wants to know how many people are watching your game so that they can sell that statistic to its advertisers, who then pay them to carry who then effectively pay them to carry our game. So let's review this question again. Character, self-officiating is standard for all levels of play. No, you don't want it at the highest levels of play. You want active referees. You don't want it for professional leagues. You want active referees. Referees are not used at any level of the sport. Wrong. You want it at the highest levels of the sport. You want it for the professional leagues. Player officiating is supported in high-level and showcase competitions by the use of observers, which is increasingly accepted by players and organizations as an artful compromise between pure self-officiating and third-party decision-making. So, the word referee comes from the word refer. And back in the days of, I believe it was soccer, used to have observers to whom you would refer when there was an argument over a call, right? They were the person to whom you would refer. They were the referee, right? So I think that you're missing the point here with the word referee to begin with, but I think more importantly, what happened was with these other sports, 100 and change years ago, these referees wound up having to become active. I believe football was the first one in the U.S. to have active referees because people were actually dying on the field constantly, because people would just abuse the rules and, break necks. The Boston game, before it was called football, the Boston game involved, the upperclassmen and the lowerclassmen beating the hell out of each other. There were an infinite number of players allowed onto an infinitely large field. And final scores were 1-0 or 2-1, which I don't care about. But the point is that you would do this for hours, and there were no rules. Or if there were rules, there was no way to enforce them except to have an enforcer on your team that went around and beating. And that's what they did. They beat the hell out of each other, and people died constantly. So it wasn't like hockey, which had one player die years ago when he slipped on the ice and cracked his skull open. And died later in the hospital, and that's why we now see helmets. Helmets are mandatory in the NHL, but so the reason you have those active referees is because people were getting seriously hurt, and I realize that ultimately it's supposed to be a non-contact sport, but if you don't have somebody who's going to step in and prevent that from happening before it happens, or if you don't have harsh penalties that you know are going to happen to you as an individual, there's nothing really preventing you from abusing the hell out of these rules. So this is a real problem. I have a real problem with everything in this statement. Again, I think your best case scenario with observers from a realistic perspective with the AUDL, which is the de facto only remaining professional league in the U.S., what you're going to find is that these games are going to take needlessly long, and you're going to have these pauses where the guys calling the games, the broadcasters, are going to have no idea what's going on, and it's going to make for an awful spectator and fan experience. And the worst part is if you're in the stands, you don't have the guys calling the game for you, and you see a call happen, and you have no idea what the call is for or what they're arguing about. You have no idea what the decision that winds up getting made is. What you have is just a stoppage for all intents and purposes, an apparent no reason. This makes for a bad spectator experience. And this happens constantly at the highest levels of the sport. So I'm realizing now that 0 means I don't care about this at all, and 100 means it's vitally important. I'm an hour and 8 into this video, and I really should have noticed this earlier. And I really should have said this right off the bat, but this is a problem with your survey. This is vitally important that you not do this. So I don't even know how to rate this now. I think I'm going to call it a 0, because it seems to be the only way to fill out the survey in a manner that would reflect that I don't want this. I don't want you. Not only should this not be part of your business plan, you should be actively avoiding this. So I'll call this a 0. And I really hope. I know we're an hour and 9 minutes into this, but USAU, please jump to this if you can. I'll try to put a link in the description of this video to this moment, because this question is I think the most detrimental question. If this is going to be part of your 10-year plan, this is going to be the most detrimental part to your 10-year plan as far as the sport moving forward at a professional or highly advanced level. So let's go 0. if you had to pick only 5 of the above visions that are must-haves for your ideal future, which 5 would you choose? All right, so right off the bat, there's no way to say, for the love of God, don't do this. There's only, for the love of God, do this. So, okay, I'll pick out the 5 that I think are, you got to do this. But a better survey would have this question, would have, and we haven't gotten there yet, so maybe it's not there, would have, what are the 5 things that you really don't want us to do? Let's see. We have check boxes. Competition. High school varsity ultimate, equal status. Whatever that means. Competition. Mixed ultimate. Elevated, popular, innovative, exemplary. Competition. Olympic ultimate. Mixed, self-officiated. Again, I really don't care if it's mixed or open or women's. If the IOC only wants women's, let's take it. Let's take it. Let's take what... Anyways. Competition. Semi-pro leagues are thriving. Females and males equally. No. Holy crap, this is bad. I think I'm going to have trouble articulating this, but the level of that, how you define thriving is going to is going to translate to how you answer this question. But I think, for all intents and purposes, thriving would be membership, viewership, and I think equity returned to investors. That's just not... It's not possible for that to be equal unless you force that to be equal, which is going to be highly detrimental to the advancement of the sport. Again, if the women's game is all anybody wants to watch, then why are we taking equity away from investors in the women's game and giving it to the men's game? No, you let the consumers make that decision, right? So, do we want equal opportunity for exposure? Yeah, we don't want companies saying, we don't want to enforce a regulation that says that you have to do one more than the other. Which, I mean, is what I'm getting at. Why not let the consumers make that decision? Why not get out of their way? If consumers want the women's game, give them the women's game. Competition, widely broadcast, viewed, sponsored. Okay. Yeah, sure. Competition, youth and teens access elite competition development. Okay. U.S. Youth Ultimate in underrepresented communities across U.S. Explosive growth. Ultimate played everywhere. Ultimate inclusive, all dimensions of diversity, whatever that means. Community, all states have local, active, member-driven organizations. I mean, I kind of don't care too much if it would be nice for Wyoming and Alaska to have an ultimate-driven community and to have active, member-driven organizations. I really don't care if they do or don't. I'd rather just have them play ultimate. It's not that important to me. That doesn't. I don't think that belongs really in the 10-year plan. Character, spirit of the game is proven as positive change vehicle. And, I really don't care if it's proven or not. Maybe it is, but who cares if it's proven whether or not that it is or not? We want people to play ultimate, right? And I kind of don't care why people play ultimate. Maybe they're just like me when I was a kid, a little spazoid that, mom needs to get out of the house on rainy day, needs to get out of the house on the weekends to run and burn off calories so that mom can actually get through a weekend, That's why my mom enrolled me into soccer, is that she needed me to, for an hour and a half, every Saturday morning, run. And run in a manner that I'm going to enjoy, and I did. And for the rest of the weekend I was a little more tolerable as a child because I wasn't, jumping across the furniture playing the floor is lava, stuff like that. Spirit of the game, thriving, cemented in education, competition, organization. again, I don't know that you have to make that the motivating factor. Right? I don't care why people play. I just want them to play. I want them to do what they enjoy doing, and I don't care why they enjoy doing it if the thing itself has merit in the first place. And you know, the ultimate can have merit without spirit of the game itself necessarily having merit. Character, self-officiating in all levels. No! Observers in, referees out. No! I know what your response rate is going to be. People are going to say observers in, referees out. That doesn't make them right. Just because it is the popular response to a polled question doesn't make it the correct response. Especially if you can support that with real theory and real data to back that. You know, people say things, and their behavior doesn't reflect what they say, so you respond to their behavior rather than their words. So right now, if I can give you a perfect example of this. This is really easy. I'm not mad. I'm not mad. I'm happy. I hate you. I hate everything, but I'm happy. Let me hurl this lamp across the room. You would say that I'm obviously angry, right? And even though I've said I'm not angry, but my behavior does not reflect what I've said. So yeah, of course, what you would do is you would react to their behavior rather than the words. So I know what's going to happen. The survey is going to say, like 80-20, get rid of the referees. But what you're going to wind up finding then is that viewership. So if viewership is doing this right now, with actually, let me do it this way. If viewership is doing this right now, you don't want viewership to go. So if viewership is increasing at a rate of 10% a year, and then you get rid of referees, and now all of a sudden viewership starts increasing at 7% a year. Yeah, viewership is increasing, but you have that 3% opportunity cost that you just lost by getting rid of the referees. So I don't think that you'll necessarily have viewership go down, but as a strategy moving forward, you want the referees, because that's what's going to lead to that, quote, explosive growth. So I think that's a definite no. I don't want that. I think... Alright, so I think that if I'm only picking 5 of these, obviously you want explosive growth because that is a reflection of interest in the sport. And that's the whole point, right, of our 10-year plan here, is to increase interest in the sport. So, I think that's inherent to USAU's existence, right? I mean, otherwise, why do we have an organizing body? There's other reasons, but I think that one has to be inherent to any governing body for any sport, So, let's see, widely broadcast, viewed, and sponsored. That should actually be part of your 10-year plan. That's, I think, imperative. Yes, you do need to have individuals in the sport be household names. In the early 1990s, when Michael Jordan became, or late 80s actually, when Michael Jordan became a household name, when everybody wanted to be like Mike. When when Nike was hurling money at him, when Gatorade was backing up the dump truck full of cash and just emptying it at his doorstep, right? That's a good thing because it draws attention to your sport. It draws viewership to your sport in a positive manner, and it's going to work towards that explosive growth, right? And I don't think that you can really promote a professional league or a professional version of the sport in any manner without broadcasting, of course, without viewership, which promotes the broadcasting. And I don't think you can do it without sponsorship because somebody is going to have to pay the capital investment for all of this, and that's a huge investment. And I just don't see individuals having that capital backing. So there's 2. I don't want to see Olympic Ultimate be self-officiated. I think that's going to turn people off. I think people who would be viewers are going to be turned off by that. I don't know that I can actually pick this. Youth teens access to elite competition development. All right, there's a third one. I mean, I would love to see the semi-pro leagues thrive, but I think a goal of having females and males thrive equally is problematic. I want them to have equal opportunity to thrive, and if they don't thrive by virtue of their own malfeasance, well, then so be it. Or if, you know, all right. I think those are the only three that I'm really high on. Otherwise, I have again. This is a problem. Here, ready? Semi-pro leagues thriving, female and males equally. USAU partner. There's three parts to that. There's three facets to that checkbox, and one of them I love. Semi-pro leagues thriving. I don't really care about females and males thriving equally. I want them to have the opportunity to thrive equally. And again, if they don't thrive because of their own malfeasance, then so be it. Shame on them, right? Shucks to them. And I don't really care if the USAU is a partner, right? Like, obviously they're going to want themselves to continue to thrive because they are themselves, right? And they don't want themselves to run themselves into the ground and dissolve. But I really don't care if USAU is a partner. If something better comes along, why wouldn't we want that? So yeah, I think those are the only three check boxes I can check off. Please feel free to provide any comments or clarifications to the above questions. This is a very small text box. I really hope that the size of the text box is not a reflection of how much wording I get. So I think what I'll just do is I'll send them my email address, and hopefully they'll be able to link. Send them. I'll just send them my email address with a link to this video, and hopefully I can get some feedback. It would be cool to hear everyone's thoughts on all of this matter. So if you have anything to say, go ahead, put it in the comments section. I would love to hear feedback from the Ultimate community especially. I think a lot of you know who I am, so I think a lot of you can reach me. I'm not sharing my personal information with the world, but yeah, if you have any questions or comments, if you want to respond to this video, there's the comments section. And yes, I will post a link to about 1 hour, 8 minutes, to where I made probably the most, to where I made the case for my most serious concern. It's an hour and 22 and 37 minutes, so I might chop up the beginning and end of this, but I don't like editing for content here. But yeah, comments in the comment section. Love to hear your thoughts.